Pam, I did it. I went live. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon, Miss Pam. How the heck are ya?
I'm great. I am living the dream.
You
Living the
are?
dream.
I
Yes.
love
I'm in my
that for
new
you.
office. So I have moving boxes behind me. New office, new house, new
And
view.
I know, right on the water. It's
Mhm.
beautiful.
It is.
She sent me a picture the other night. She was sitting on her dock, and all I could see was her little feet and then the ocean. And I wrote back, "You stink." You were having a good time. Do you like being on the ocean?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Because we have this patch of seagrass in front of us, and so we have dolphins, we have manatees. I mean, you have all the sea life.
Yeah.
So
It,
it's really nice. And
it,
the birds. You watch the birds and then you can see the changes in the water. And then in the middle of the day, you'll walk by the window and you just stop and go, wow, that's so pretty. And then you lose all track of time. It's
yeah.
better than social media.
It's really awesome. And so I was at her house, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago before you moved in.
In
Yeah,
February.
okay. So they were working on it, and you could just see. So I've seen pictures and since sent them, but building a house is a lot of stress, and I think it's very similar to building a business.
Mhm.
For a segue, I'm going to use that because I do think they're similar. It is stressful to do what we do when you want to get to a certain level.
Yes.
And I think you're trying to build a business. You're not just trying to build a job for yourself.
Right. And there's a lot of days where I do feel like I've just created a job for myself. And that's
Right.
kind of where I am right now. I'm too far along. I'm not going to go back. I'm in way too deep to pivot to anything else at this point. And I love what I'm doing and I love where I'm going. It's just some days it feels like a job.
Yeah. So I did that too. For there were maybe a year
Mm-hmm.
that I felt like, oh Lord, I built myself a job. I went from one job to another job. And the problem when you build yourself a job is it becomes more and more difficult to sustain it. Because when you work for somebody else, right? You can, on Saturday, you can just be like, well, I'm not going to think about that because I'm not being paid right now to think about it. But when you own it, you don't ever shut down. So we want to at least build ourselves a business so that you can keep going. And I want to make sure everybody in the audience understands what I mean about the two differences. One is you're just hustling every day for the same stuff over and over again. And the second is you're building yourself something sustainable that you can have other people do, that you can go on vacation and everything can continue while you're gone.
Well, and that's where I want to get to. So, we're here to talk about PoshFest. So, and even before that, at eBay Open, with I live on the East. We both live on the East Coast, so we're on Eastern time. And traveling out west, you lose that 3 hours. And so, because I was used to getting up. I would get up before we started our day and work on my listings first thing in the morning. And that's something that I had to do because, well, number one, I don't have a bank of listings for them to go out scheduled because that's my own personal problem. But the other thing is, you're still in your business. I have a photographer. I have someone helping me write listings, but I'm not at the point where I can get someone else to do those other steps for me.
So you're not at the point where you could just walk away and everything's going to continue. You
Right.
have to be involved.
If I take a vacation and leave my computer at home and walk away for a week, it would affect my sales. And
right.
I feel like it's really hard because I've worked hard to get to this point to that consistency that we talk about a lot.
Yep.
To be consistent in listing and cross listing and doing all those things, I feel like I still have to be present. I can't walk away for a week.
Yeah. And so, I really think that this is something that a lot of people want to get to. They want to get to where they have a business, not just a job. And we
Yeah.
used to talk about this a lot in Mastermind about building yourself a business and not just a job. And I haven't said it much lately. And I think I'm going to go back to it because I do think there are much different, those are two different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
One is about process and systems and consistency. And one is just about getting up and hustling every day. And if you want to be successful long term, I really think you need the process. You need those things that we're talking about. And the one thing that disappoints me in Poshmark, personally disappoints me in Poshmark, is that they really lean, I believe, into the first one. They really lean into people who are not doing this as a job. It's either a side hustle, a part-time job, or it's just I'm going to sell the stuff out of my closet and I'm going to buy something and then I'm going to, keep the kind of the recycle, reuse, relove thing happening, which is great. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to make it sound like I think everyone who resells needs to have a business. I don't.
Right.
But what I don't like about Poshmark specifically is that I don't feel they give people who want to have a business. I don't think they give us a lot of tools
Mm-hmm.
as comparatively to eBay.
Well, right. There's absolutely nothing right. If you want to make a little extra money, you want to switch out your closet. And I think Poshmark does a really good job of addressing those people.
Yep, agreed.
They do a really good job of knowing that part of their audience. But the other part of their audience, people like us, people who really do have who are bringing home, thousands of dollars a month, that the business owner, the business sellers, they're not addressing their needs as well.
Agreed.
And I believe, when I attended PoshFest last year in Nashville, that was one of the reasons that I went to PoshFest, is that I wanted to understand more about selling on Poshmark. I started on my first two platforms were Mercari and Poshmark. They were easy. I could jump in. I could just get started. It wasn't eBay. eBay was really scary for a long time. Yep. I remember being scared of eBay. But to jump in feet first with Mercari and Poshmark, they made that very easy for me to do that. And I think that's the reason that a lot of people do that, especially younger people who just like to switch out their closets, that follow trends, or moms getting rid of their kids' clothing.
Right, exactly.
It's a heck of a lot easier than a consignment sale that's in your neighborhood. And
a heck of a lot easier than eBay. I mean, it is. The shipping is easier. The listing process is easier. Yeah.
So, like I said, so I went to PoshFest to understand a little bit more of how I could be a better seller, which is the same reason I went to eBay Open. Yep. I went to understand the platform better and how I can improve my sales, how I can be a better seller, how we can work together better. And
in last year in Nashville, did you feel like you got some of that?
I will say that I felt like last year, I didn't walk away necessarily being completely satisfied with that. But when you compare last year's PoshFest to this year's PoshFest, I feel like last year's PoshFest, actually, I mean, they did give me some stats. They did give us some things. I know that I was there, and Crystal was there, and Pam McAllister was there. There were several of us that were there, and were able to come back and use the things that they had shared with us and we tried some things in our morning mastermind, where we started experimenting with some of the stats and some of the things that they gave us. So I felt like it was good in the sense that it did give us some ideas to try. I didn't necessarily feel that way this year. Yeah, I went
Yeah.
specifically into the analytics session, which is where I got some really great information last year. And when I walked into the session on analytics, I was kind of expecting the same thing, but all it really told me was, how to ship. Well, it was some really basic steps and nothing for someone who's already been doing this more than 3 months.
Right.
So there were some of the sessions I was disappointed in the information. I just felt like it was very
Basic.
surface. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was very basic. It was
Yeah.
very surface level kind of stuff.
I do think Clara's here and she just wrote in the chat the weirdest posh ever. And I don't disagree with her. It had a different feeling. I have been to, I think 5 PoshFests, and it had a much different feel than any of the others that I've been to. I do think maybe some of it was location. I think San Jose, while a very nice city, isn't that easy to get to. All of us who were there, except for Clara, everyone had a connecting flight. There were no direct flights to San Jose. It's a small airport. It's not like flying into LAX or Boston or even Tampa. It was very hard to get a direct flight. I couldn't get a direct flight from Boston, no matter what I was willing to pay. There were no direct flights.
Yeah, I had thought about going up to Nashville first. I thought about flying there from Nashville. I couldn't get a nonstop flight from Nashville either.
Right, and so, and then Todd's in the chat and he wrote, I didn't have to fly. There were, but no, I know he's being funny, but that brings up a good point. It seemed to me to be a very localized California audience. Every time we said to somebody, where are you from? They would say, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like we knew where that was. We expected somebody to say Montana, Massachusetts, New Hampshire. Do you know what I mean? And they'd be like, blah, blah, blah. And you'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, where is that? And they'd be like, oh, California. And that happened over and over and over again.
Now, I did run across, there were a couple of people from Tampa, from the Tampa area that I talked to and made sure that they got information about our group that gets together, our local group that gets together. But yeah, for the most part, it was a local crowd.
That's what I felt.
I think that's because it was on the West Coast. When you have events in the center of the country, it's easier to get to from all directions.
Correct.
You can get a flight. It's easy to get a flight to Nashville. It's easy to get a flight to St. Louis. Right. Any of those places that are centralized in the middle of the country, it's very difficult to get to the other coast.
Agreed. And somebody like me from Massachusetts, it's the same thing from Florida. It's a very long flight. And then you have the time difference and everything, and I fly all the time. So I'll go anywhere. I want to go everywhere. Right. I mean, that's just my personality. Right. Yeah. So I don't care about going, but it was just one of those things that I thought would be hindrance for some people. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting, other than it seemed to be a much more localized crowd, it also seemed to be a much newer seller crowd. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of people who were new to reselling that we spoke to. Mm-hmm. And it also, I found there were a lot of people who were older, and I'm in that demographic. So I'm not throwing shade because I would be considered one of these people too. But when I first started going to PoshFest, it was a young crowd. Everyone was in their early 20s. I would joke about it being like a fashion show because everyone was dressed to the nines every day. And that didn't have this feel this year for me. It was a more, there were a lot of people that we met that said that they were going to be doing this in retirement, that they maybe were still working, but they were thinking about being a reseller in retirement.
Right. Right. And I met several of those. Yeah. I felt like it was it was either young people who were probably looking for a little extra money or a side hustle, and were newer to selling on Poshmark, and maybe they had heard of cross listing. They weren't really sure about what cross listing was.
Exactly.
And I had to explain that a lot. I thought that was very interesting. Or, yeah, they were our age, because you put yourself out there saying, "Oh, that's my age too."
Well, I didn't want people to think I was older than you. Yeah, well, not by much though, Pam. Let's be serious. No, but I mean, I didn't want people to think I was ranking on the old ladies, because we're the old ladies. Yeah. Like, we would have been in that same demographic, but it's just not the norm for when we go to Poshmark. Mm-hmm. Ed just wrote, that's one reason I felt uncomfortable going. It felt 10 times more formal than eBay Open or Boss Reseller Remix. I agree with that. In general, I would totally agree with that. It's a much more dress to impress kind of crowd, but I didn't feel that this year.
Right, but those people were there. Make no mistake.
Yeah.
I saw some great outfits.
Oh God, yeah.
Great shoes. The shoes that were the dinosaurs. Those were the best. Those were the best.
Somebody put in the chat, Marie's in there, and I know she knows. I'm sorry that my internet keeps freezing. I restarted it right before this. I know that Marie was there when the woman with the shows, with the sneakers, the dinosaur shoes. I forget what they're called. If Marie could put it in the chat, I'd appreciate it. Or if somebody else knows. Everybody knew what those shoes were. I must have heard like 5 people say, "Oh, those irregular choice." Thank you, Marie.
Yes.
Irregular choice. They're like, "Oh, those are a regular choice. Those are a regular choice." And I'm thinking, man, I do not ever pay attention to the shoe game, because I never heard of a regular choice ever. And
I saw her on I was behind her on the escalator, and I was like, "What is that?" And then I got close enough to see, and I was like, "Those are the best." The heels were a T-Rex. It was an orange T-Rex. They were great.
They were awesome. And so that was really great. There were a lot of people. I mean, you're 100% right. There were a lot of people that were dressed just like you would think so for PoshFest. And you know, it is a fun thing to watch. I mean, and there were this whole set of women who came downstairs at one point, and they all had something leopard print on, or animal print, I should say. It was all different kinds of animal print. And these women had that magnolia pearl look. They all had that, the long things, the lace, the jeans, it all had this look to it, hats. And, they obviously were in some kind of group. And I found out afterwards that they all follow these couple of women, and they all said, "Oh, let's just meet down. Everybody wears something animal print. We'll take photos." And there used to be a lot of that. You would see like cohorts, for lack of a better word, of everybody kind of dressing the same, having the same, not exactly the same, but it was
that whole PFF thing,
yes,
Friends Forever, the PFF. And no, I didn't, I just, it felt a little bit lean.
I agree with that. Lean is a good word.
Lean.
Yeah.
And which then I go, well, did it have to do with, there's a new CEO coming in?
So that's one thing. Let's talk about that for a second. So Manesh, who has been the CEO from the beginning, he announced he was stepping down earlier this year. He was at PoshFest. He did give the keynote. But he's leaving, and there's a new CEO. He was supposed to be there. Something happened. We had heard that maybe his dad had died. And so he was not at PoshFest. And so because of that, who knows what he would have said or what would have been interesting.
Right. So I had been really looking forward to that, because I kind of wanted to know the direction. I mean, really, that's what you're looking for when you have an outgoing leader and an incoming leader. You really want to understand the direction of where the company is going, especially one that's really important to your business, which
Right.
Poshmark is. eBay is my largest platform, but Poshmark's right behind it. For a lot of years, they were 50-50, and eBay is, I now sell more on eBay than I do on Posh. And I don't know if that's me or if it's Poshmark. But
I think I'm sure it's probably a combination, but tell me how much of LP, how much is Poshmark of your business right now? 30%, 40?
It's probably 35 to 40%.
Okay.
I mean, eBay is well over 50, between 50 and 60. It kind of varies month to month. But yeah, if I sell on Etsy, I sell on just a tiny bit on Mercari, I sell a few things on Depop, but for all intents and purposes, eBay is my largest platform, and Poshmark is my second largest.
And
It's
because
more
of
like
that,
a 60-40 split.
yeah. And I think a lot of people would say the exact same thing, right? I think a lot of people in our circle, so as in like people who come to mastermind semi-regularly or people that are in the List Perfectly Facebook group, I think a lot of them would be in the same group. And because of that, 30 to 40% of your business is a huge percent.
Mhm.
And because of that, I wish Poshmark would give us a few more tools to make the business part of our business easier.
Well, I there was a survey that Poshmark did before PoshFest.
Okay.
The when you go to your notifications page and they have that banner at the top that talks about contests or talks about different things. When they started changing the shipping around last week, they make the announcements at the top. And there was a week there where they had this banner up, and you could give the company feedback about changes you would like to see in Poshmark. And so I clicked on it and gave some feedback. They wanted to know, and the things that I said, I think are things that we've all talked about, like being able to run sales on Poshmark, being able to access different things, different tools on Poshmark, kind of like we do on eBay, being able to mark some different percentages, being able to separate your closet, being able to filter some things easier. And I didn't hear anything about anything
Well,
that I suggested.
We didn't hear anything. Well, we didn't hear much about anything, really. There wasn't anything. Usually when we walk away from PoshFest, there are new things to talk about. There's something's been put out there that a new feature or something, you can do this, or insights into your closet, kind of like what happened last year when we went back and we tested the theories that they told us were happening.
Right.
And that had a lot to do with Posh shows. And it had to do with if you got a kick in the algorithm from doing Posh shows, all these things last year. This year, we didn't really have any of that. And I wonder if the new CEO had been there, would we have gotten that? Would we have gotten that if the new CEO had been there? So I am hopeful that maybe we will get some stuff. But you had an interaction. So you, Clara, and I were at the booth. And you and Clara, I think, introduced you to somebody, but I really wasn't there. So can you tell us what that was about?
I don't know what his official name is, but he was the CFO, and Clara's in the chat, so she could probably. I believe he's the CFO, and super nice man. She called him KK, and she introduced me to him. And he was so friendly, so personable, and really wanted to know about my business. And I said, yes, that using List Perfectly and that my business has doubled each year since using List Perfectly. And he's like, really? And so then we were talking about he's like, well, how big is your Poshmark closet? And I went, it's over 6,000 items. And he's like, you have over 6,000 items in your closet? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, I want to follow you. And so he opens up his phone to the app, And I told him that the name of my business was Restated Threads, and he went to go search it out and was having a real difficult time finding it easily. You know, when a major player in your company opens up their phone, goes to the app, and they can't touch something and get there immediately.
Not good.
No, it's not good. It's not
No.
good. You should be able to get to things with one click.
Right.
So he stopped right then and there, and he said, "There's some of our top engineers over here." He said, "I'm going to go and talk to them, and then I'm going to come right back." And he did. He walked across the room. He saw them. He went over there and said, "This is the problem that I'm having, and I want to find this closet, and I want to be able to do it like this." So they showed him what to do, and he said, "Well, it shouldn't be this difficult." And so
it should be more intuitive.
Right. It should be very intuitive. You know, I know that eBay is constantly working on that. A big platform like Amazon is constantly working on that, how to make it more intuitive for your sellers and buyers.
Right.
So I believe that, you know, maybe after that conversation, maybe they will be working on some search features, because, you know, I think we all know I've tried to search things on Poshmark, and it's not an easy process.
No.
Whether I'm looking for a seller or looking for an item, you know, if I go and put in the search the specific, you know, I shop for my granddaughter quite a bit on there. If I go put in 3T girls clothing, I get all sorts of different things and all sorts of different sizes. And so it's not very useful for me to do that.
Right. So I just wanted to say, Clara's in the chat, and she wrote he was the director of finances.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure we.
And his name was KK. I did remember that his name was KK. I thought that
he was very nice. I got introduced at the very end, right before he was walking away. He seemed like a very nice. He was personable, but you know, Todd wrote a bad experience, but with the right person. And I think that's key, right? So when you have somebody who then has some clout and can go over and say, "Hey, this is not the way it should work," right? It has a lot more weight coming from this guy because, of course, he's higher up there. So it has more weight than you and I saying, especially when, you know, we probably don't complain about certain things enough because we think it's just the way it is. And one of the things, actually, Amanda, the co-founder of List Perfectly, said in a meeting yesterday, you know, if something isn't working the way it's supposed to, you need to make sure we understand that, because, you know, people who are doing these things don't necessarily understand how reselling should work. And it's the same thing at Poshmark. You know, so some of it is on us. And the thing about, I don't know about Posh, but the thing about eBay is that eBay has on each screen, you can go in and say something about that screen. You can report to eBay right then on this screen that something isn't working right. It's not directing you where it's supposed to. It's not intuitive. And I know from eBay personally that they read these. I mean, I'm sure it's AI reading them, but it's compiled. Yeah.
But there's got to be, I mean, there's some trigger words in there that trigger the algorithm, that trigger to where it's supposed to go. So,
right.
And I believe, so my personal belief is that, you know, it doesn't do any good for me to sit and complain about anything. It doesn't do me any good to sit here and complain about Poshmark. Oh, Poshmark this, that. I can sit and complain about Poshmark all day long.
Right.
But what I would rather do when I go to these events, whether it's PoshFest or eBay Open, or when I go to Boss and we have several different different people from different companies there, I would rather go and tell them, "I love your product, but here's where I'm having issues." And then how they handle that and how they are receptive to it is really key. So it was really important for him to say, "Wait just a minute, let me go and talk to the engineers." And then he made a point of coming back to me and saying, you know, this is what I needed to do, but it should be easier than this, and this is something we're going to work on. So
Right.
just his attitude towards that, and not blowing me off, because
Right.
he doesn't know who I am, and he may not ever run into me again.
Exactly.
But I see that, and that made me feel good as a Posh user. But I've also gotten that reception from, there are people at eBay who will listen, and even with List Perfectly, I know that if I'm coming across an issue, whether I'm using the AI feature, the little box at the bottom of the screen, or if I'm having a conversation with Clara or with you or anybody with LP, I know that issue is going to get addressed. They take constructive criticism and use it to solve a problem. And I think that's any company that's doing that is worth my money and my time.
I agree with you, and I don't say that just because I work here. It is I will toot Clara and Amanda's horn a little bit for this. They are both very accessible, especially Clara. And therefore through Clara to Amanda, but they are both very accessible. And Clara takes what you guys say absolutely to heart. She absolutely, I've been in many a meeting where she says, Pam Arnold says, blah, 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 to whoever, or, whoever said blah, blah, blah. And it is taken very seriously. And, every time she comes into Mastermind, she asks you guys questions about, what's working, what's not working. And if it's changeable, it's changed. And for an example, we were in a meeting, and I think it was Robin who said, what I would really like is the arrow to be able to go jump right back up to the top of the page.
Yep.
He goes, every other website has those. Why don't we? And we had it in a week.
Clara, all of a sudden there's a button there.
Clara's like, I agree with you. And then the next thing I know, a week later, there it is. It's back. It's there. And it's there because Clara heard it, realized it was something that we needed, that it was easy enough for her to do quickly. And, then it's in. And so for that kind of thing, that's what's great about working with List Perfectly, is because it is a small company, but it's more than small, it's responsive, right? Yes. They pivot really quickly. And that's what I always talk about with eBay. I love eBay, and I'm an eBay girl, right? I'm eBay all the way. But eBay's a tanker. And once eBay starts going down a one way, I'm flowing this way, it's very hard to stop a tanker. And so because of that, even things that seem to us very small, like just fix that. What's the problem? Like, automatic payments. We had it for a little while and now it seems to be gone again. But everything else kind of is attached to it. So it's not as easy, and it's not as easy to be responsive. And that's what's really great about LP, is how responsive they are and how they look at these things and can change them so quickly, and take what you guys say to heart and want to change what they can change immediately. And I really do have a lot of respect for them for that, because, I have worked at a lot of other places who could care less what their customers really think.
Well, yeah, you and me both. I was a school teacher.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Getting crap when you said exactly. So that was one great thing. KK, that was great. But so now tell us about, you told us about going to that analytics class. Anybody in the chat, did you guys find anything at eBay, at eBay Open, at PoshFest that you found to be beneficial? Was there anything that you found? I'd love to know if you want to. If there was anything at PoshFest that you found really beneficial that maybe Pam and I didn't hear. We were both working at the List Perfectly booth. Pam, not so much as me, but I never really left for 2 days. I was there the whole time.
Yeah, you were spinning that wheel. You were helping people. They spun the wheel, that stack. So let's talk about the List Perfectly booth at PoshFest.
It
So
was a hoot.
the List Perfectly booth was fantastic, and I believe it was the busiest booth
Agreed.
in the room. Now, it was a great big room, probably too big
Yep.
for
With
the
that also.
number of vendors that they had
Yep.
in there, but we had a lot of space. And I know that Clara had gone out and purchased different luxury items through Poshmark,
Yep.
in different people's closets. So I know that we had Chanel purses and wallets, and there was a Chanel ring, and there were Gucci shoes, and I mean the prizes, the things you could win were fantastic. And then we had people who won a year of LP, and you sit there and go, and they're like, oh, but I wanted Chanel, and we're like, that's a $1,200.
Exactly. That's worth more than that ring. Exactly.
I love a year of LP for free. Do you know how that would help my business?
Yeah, exactly. It's true. It's very true. And the woman, though, it was so cute. The woman won this Gucci pocketbook and she started to cry. It was so sweet. I mean, she's like, I've never owned anything luxury before. It was such a sweet thing. And it really was great. And having Clara there, everybody always wants to talk to her. And I love it. People would start, like, and she's like, oh, I'll take your pic. It was just cute. It was really a nice thing. And
she's enthusiastic about her
yeah,
product.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I will tell you that the thing about List Perfectly, because I mean, we had all sorts of people that were talking in the line. So here I am, I'm talking to people in line, Desiree and Marie. I mean, and Todd, they were like all the way down the line before I could get to the next person. Because, I'm Southern. I'm going to sit there and have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to find out about their family tree. And I want to know about
exactly. Exactly. But we had a very long line. People waited a long time to spin. It was really fun. I thought the energy was really good in our booth. We had a really good time. People were hooting and hollering, whether they won or not. Sometimes it was even funnier if they won like a sticker or something, because they'd be like, womp, womp, womp. It was really, and then when people won, everybody went crazy. It was really fun. And it was one of the more entertaining experiences I have had in the booth, I got to be honest. And I really did have a great time. And so, that's always great. And Ed said, out of all the people who spin, how many didn't know about cross-listing? More than you would have thought. It's funny. I think that we think that there is a certain level of expertise when we talk to somebody. I think we think that they already know certain things. And there were people who were like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean cross-listing? What does that mean? Right. And never mind the other stuff. Never mind our AI component. Never mind that will help you build a lister better, faster, stronger, more optimized. Never mind those things, and there were a lot of Poshmark only sellers. Todd just wrote that, and I think he's absolutely right. There were a lot of only Poshmark sellers, and that's a good and a bad thing, right? I think starting on Posh, if you want to be a reseller, if anybody is brand new to reselling and they ask me, how do I get into this? Mm-hmm. I would say, start on eBay. Because once you master eBay, you can sell anywhere, right? Once you master eBay, you can sell on Posh, you can sell on Mercari, you can sell anywhere. But when you start on Poshmark, I think it's a tougher thing. Just my opinion.
It was scary for me to start cross-listing on eBay, just because you hear about all of eBay's rules. Because eBay has, you can do this, and then you have to worry about shipping. And then, when you first sign up, when you're a new seller on eBay and you start getting the scammy stuff, until after you get past, once you have a little feedback, that stops. But, somebody told me, they're like, oh, go buy some really cheap things, get some feedback that way, and those will stop. And they did. Yeah. But, it was, yeah, there were a lot of newbies. There were a lot of Poshmark only, and I got a lot of people who weren't really sure about what cross listing
Yeah.
is,
And
and they confused it, with sharing.
yep.
They were confusing sharing and cross listing. A lot of them wanted to know, or they used some of the lesser products to share their closets and wanted to know about that. About why I use does LP share my closet? And I was like, yeah, when you try this and use this. And I kept telling people about it. And then, so the second day, I brought my computer and I was standing in line and showing people how easy it was to use List Perfectly. And they were blown away by the AI. They were blown away by the pictures. Somebody was saying, well, I want to put my pictures into Poshmark and then I want to bring it over and then could I push it out to eBay? And just things that we talked about in Mastermind, about that you had told us about the quality of Poshmark's photos. And I said, well, it would actually be easier if you put your pictures into LP and then pushed it out. I said, you're going to have a better quality of photo. And they were like, really?
Yeah.
How do you know that? And I said, well, this is why. And this is how I know this, because I have to give credit to Listing Party and our mastermind group, because we talk about those things. And I really tried to put that, and I believe so did everybody else in line, because we're all because we all attend mastermind. We really tried to push the Listing Party aspect and that group think and that that hive mindset where somebody comes to the group with a problem and everybody with their shared experience is able to give feedback. And a lot of people, I think a lot of people were impressed by that.
I agree with you. And I do think that is one thing that we do better than anybody. And I honestly think we do it better than than the platforms themselves. We really have a great community, and we also really, and I mean this sincerely, when I say that, we're only successful if you guys are successful, I 100% mean that. And I want everyone to get where they want to go. Not everyone needs to be a 6-figure seller. Not everyone needs to be a 7-figure seller. But if you want to be a 6-figure seller, I want you to be there, and let's work on how to get you there with our tools, with our people, with thinking about outside the box, about, putting our heads together. And I really do think that one of the best unsung things about List Perfectly is Listing Party. And, Clara has talked about really kind of leaning into it in the next, foreseeable future. And I do think that one of the great things about LP is Listing Party, and, you guys in particular.
Well, and I talk about our mastermind a lot, but just the fact that you have a daily, a weekday 411 where you can talk to people who are in the tech, who are from the tech department and work with LP and are the actual people who are doing all of the programming of the platform, and you can ask them questions and they're nice to you.
Yeah.
They're lots of times you're talking to somebody on the phone and there's no emotion there, and all they're doing is reading from the screen, but you're actually talking to someone, and you can share your screen and say, this is my problem. And there's that. And then you have people who, like a Star who recognizes that for mental health, we need to think and talk about other things. And so she creates this whole true crime thing, which I'm never able to get to.
I know.
But I just think that
sounds fun.
Ever.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then we're going to go to Listing Party. Speaking of Listing Party, we're going to go over there in a minute, but let me ask you a question. Will you go to PoshFest again? Oh, I did not expect a hesitation. I expected you to say yes. immediately.
Yes, I'll go just because. Well, you know what? Here's the thing: is it's hard for me on the East Coast to get to the West Coast.
Yep.
So it'll just depend. It'll depend. It'll depend. I did, but I'll tell you. And a lot of people saw this. Yeah, I love Kaylee Elaine. I watched.
Oh God, you guys, she fangirled out over Kaylee Elaine.
Fangirl over Kaylee Elaine, her husband Joe, Nikki.
Yeah, he is an attractive boy. He was a big strapping thing, man. I was like, hi.
I know. But it was really cute. I mean, he's just there to support.
I know, it was so adorable.
Y'all, yep. He was so nice.
He was very nice.
When you have somebody that has all of these views, has this huge following, and she's there promoting her business, and they were just the nicest, most authentic people. And Nikki came and found me at the party and was like, "We need to have our picture made." And I was just
okay.
I know, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But it was so much fun, y'all. And really, it was the people I was with. It was being there with Liz Perfectly and Mastermind folks.
Yeah.
And just, if I'd been by myself, I don't know, I probably wouldn't have had as much of a good, but I had people to talk to in the evening and share meals with. Yeah. And honestly, there were enough events that you probably, even if I had gone by myself, there were enough people there that would have said, "Oh, hey, come to dinner with us."
Totally you would have. And I think that's what's really great about all of these things. What you get by going to these, even if the programming stinks, which I'm going to go out on a ledge and say this year's programming kind of on the stinky side, but everything else, who you meet, what you get to talk about, those conversations can really push your business forward. And I think that, we had a lot of that. There was a lot of talking about what everybody does and how they do it and all that. So even above just the regular programming, I think a lot of that is great and it can really help push your business forward. And I got to be honest, until I was very lucky that I went to eBay Open with Diane very quickly. I had only decided to do this, and within 6 months I was at eBay Open. Mm-hmm. And when I went to eBay Open, I realized, and then very quickly after that I went to PoshFest. Yeah. But I realized, people do this for a freaking living. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? And I didn't see that. I don't know if it would have taken me years to get where I got if I hadn't had that experience, because I went in a room and there were people in there who were making six figures. And I was like, oh.
Right. I did the same thing. So I started reselling in April of 21 and went to Boss in October of 21.
Yeah.
So I had 6 months and I walk in and you start talking to people and finding out what they're doing and how they're really making bank doing flipping things online. I had no idea. Yeah. And from that moment on, I was hooked. I was so motivated that first year.
Trish agreed. And that's
Diane was there. He was there. I mean, I met so many people who were really working this business and were really successful at it. And I thought, and I had conversations with them and I was like, these are regular people who've done this. I can do this too.
That's what I got out of it. I mean, and I'm going to sound totally obnoxious when I say this, but I met somebody and I thought, if you can do that, I can do that. Like, and I don't mean it rudely, but I just meant, it's not like I met Barack Obama and you think, you're so charismatic and blah, blah, blah. And I can see it, but you would meet somebody and you'd think they worked hard. I can work hard. They're not any smarter than me. I can do that. Do you know what I mean? Like so you met somebody who was on your same level and you thought, if you can do it, of course I can do it. And that was very helpful to get at the beginning rather than having already everything set in my ways. And I really leaned into that. I studied anybody that I could get my hands with. I bought courses. I did a lot of stuff in the very beginning. And because of that, I feel very fortunate because of it, to be quite honest with you, because I know a lot of us go for a long time before we figure out there's other resellers out there.
Right, right. And I would tell anyone, lean into the community of, no matter what it is that you're doing, lean into the community part of whatever business you're in, and do it quickly, because that's important. That's important.
Exactly.
I think that's just as important as sitting here and listing every day. Is
Agreed.
Making connections with the community.
I agree with you completely. Though, for anybody listening, you still need to list every day.
Is it just as important as listing?
I know. I'm just wanting to make sure, because some people, they need to list. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. Pam, thank you so much. If anybody isn't using List Perfectly, you can use the discount code Restated Threads, and that's Pam's code. She'd love to give you 30% off any plan for the first month. And, we really appreciate your help. Everybody who came to PoshFest, really, really appreciated. It was great. I had a great time with you guys, and it was really a nice little representation of what we are and who we are at there. And it was wonderful. And from me personally, I really appreciate it. You guys make my job a pleasure to do almost every day. Every once in a while, I want to kill one of you, but no, I'm kidding. No, but it is awesome. And thank you guys so much. And, we'll see you next week. I am off next week, so I don't know what the heck they're talking about, but please, we're going to go to listing party right now if anyone would like to come and hang out. Thanks, guys. I'm sorry I keep freezing. Everybody have a great day. Thanks, guys.